years ago, we launched the first version of our travel accelerator. We took SAP Hybris Commerce, which is a market-leading B2C consumer platform that drives many of the world's leading retail online retailers. And we adapted it for the travel industry. Specifically, we adapted it for the airline industry. Since that time, we've now actually released 4 versions of it, and we're currently in development of our 5th version. So we're making tremendous progress, and actually, in August of last year, we achieved IATA Level 3 certification. And there were many people when I moved from into the role in SAP Hybris who said, surely we can't just take a standard retail platform and get it to work in an airline environment. You know, our airline industry has decades of processes and protocols and ways of working that you can't just take that. I want to share with you in the next 15, 20 minutes some of the projects and proof of concepts that we're working on, specifically around IATA One Order. And again, I'll also talk about some of the convergences and some of the drivers of the convergence that we're seeing, both in the industry, but also where we talk to customers. And specifically, share with you some of the work that we're doing on the transition. Because I think so many times we talk about the vision, the future, One Order, driven by IATA and the airline community about this is the vision for the future. But actually the hard bit is transition. The real hard bit is getting from where we are today to where we need to be in the future. And at SAP Hybris, we're starting to bring some of that to life. But first, 3 very unlikely logos to see on the page. And actually that kind of dictates the thread of my last 15 years in the industry. So I spent 7 years at Travelport and developing commerce solutions for the industry and quite frankly learning how complex this industry is. And it is a very, very complex industry, as we said. Decades of processes, decades of protocols. And then I spent 4 years at EasyJet, where, albeit probably less complex in the low-cost carrier bucket that Richard talked about earlier, but still scale. I mean, we're talking 75 million passengers, over 1,500 flights a day. And I learned how you can actually run an airline without any of that complexity. We developed a vision and a strategy for a future retailing platform because personalization and agility was key to us. I live in Edinburgh. And when I was working at EasyJet, I used to fly down on the orange bus to Luton every week. And that meant I had to buy my flights. And I flew something like 100 times a year with EasyJet. But even EasyJet, seen as probably one of the digital leaders in terms of direct communication with the customer, still tried to sell me a rental car after having purchased 100 flights. And I never actually purchased a rental car. You thought that maybe they would have started to learn and thought, well, why don't we actually try and sell him parking in Edinburgh? Because then they might be able to actually personalize the journey for him. So what that set off was the search for what the next generation platform was going to be. And that's where the 3rd logo comes in, that's SAP Hybris. And EasyJet chose SAP Hybris. They're in the middle of implementing that right now. And I took the opportunity when I saw what Hybris could offer and some of the drivers that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and what that could offer both EasyJet, but also now when we talk to airlines around the world, both low-cost carriers, hybrids, and full-service carriers as well, that the benefit that that platform can bring. So for anybody who doesn't believe that our industry doesn't need to change, I recently took a trip to Hawaii. It was a 3-leg trip. Again, I live in Edinburgh, so there were 3 flights involved with 3 different carriers. And I flew from Edinburgh to Heathrow, and then I took an interline journey with 2 different operating carriers from Heathrow through LAX to Kona. And this is what I had to contend with. This is a simple family trip with 3 P&Rs, 6 tickets, and 9 record locators. So in essence, that's one trip where I've paid for it once and I've got 15 different references. If that wasn't so much to contend with, when I actually came to check in for the Heathrow to LAX flight, I was effectively given this message. And this is a real live capture, because I actually thought this cannot be real, and I actually captured it. I couldn't check in. It wouldn't let me check in for the flight, because it said, but the first operating carrier, you need to check in with them first. So I thought, well, I've already flown that and checked in on that flight. So what that meant was, from a customer experience, I had to then queue up at the airport. Not too much of a big deal. However, I had the same issue on the return flight, which meant that I couldn't check in for the LAX, for the LAX to Heathrow final segment. Now, that flight landed at 5:30 in the morning at LAX. And so I had to then go to the agent, to the check-in desk, because I had to check in manually. I couldn't do it online. But unfortunately, because the flight didn't leave until 5:30 in the afternoon, there was no one there. The check-in desk didn't open until 3 o'clock. So the customer experience that I had was pretty poor. So from my perspective, these are some of the core things that we've got in our industry that really means that we need to start and drive some of those changes. Now, there are many, many elements driving change in our industry, and I've picked 4. And they're 4 specifically because they're probably the 4 that we talk with airlines around the world mostly about. Not that we talk to them, these are the challenges and concerns that they come with us. So specifically, we've been pushing the PSS to do more and more. So originally, GDS distribution, it's still doing that, and then in the mid-90s, with the birth of the internet booking engine. So we took the internet booking engine, we stuck that on top of the PSS, and we started to sell online. And then the advent of web services, the advent of the metas and the OTAs put more and more strain on this traditional infrastructure. And today we're looking at omni-channel digital NDC. So we're really starting to stretch the architecture of some of these systems that ultimately were not designed for a digital world. The lexicon of retail has now fully pervaded the airline industry. If you look at certainly the reference architecture of an airline now, and if you look at the RFPs that we see, then offer management, order management, personalization, merchandising, these are all retailing capabilities. So we are now truly in the retailing world. And now we're moving towards dynamic product pricing. And it was interesting listening to some of the comments today where we need to move beyond inventory control pricing, one where we can actually start to manage the price, the live price of the product. But not just revenue manage the product, revenue manage the bundle. Not just revenue manage the bundle, revenue manage the cart. And actually then personalize that revenue that offer so that we're looking at the holistic requirements of the customer. Agility is massive. When we were at EasyJet, and again, we didn't have some of the complexities that some of the airlines in this room have, we just wanted to launch a very simple product. We wanted to launch a bundled product. Take a seat, take a bag, and a standard ticket, and bundle that together and make that available as a one-click purchase. That project took 9 months, and it cost £474,000. That's not agility. And also cost. We need to start to remove the high levels of cost that we have, specifically now with NDC, where we're now starting to put more and more capability, more and more demand into our inventory availability. And again, that's now making some of the architectures that we have uneconomic. So what that really means is that it's all focusing on the reservation systems that we have, and it's converging towards a digital customer platform. A platform that IATA is driving around One Order, which is a very open systems, retail-based, delivering these commerce capabilities. And that really then plays to the core heartland of where Hybris commerce and its core DNA is from. So operating in this future one order state actually is the easy bit, and that's not a flippant comment, because if we could freeze time and transition all of us together and then unfreeze time, then we can all move into that direction. But it just doesn't work like that. It's very difficult to do this transition. It's going to be challenging for even the group airlines to move to a one-order environment within their own group and their own operating airlines. Harder still when you look at the alliances, and really tough for the small long tail of carriers who rely on codeshare and interline for their away markets. So the question is then, when you're going to transition from an architecture perspective, there are two approaches that are put there by IATA, and the question is, well, what's the correct approach? Well, the first approach is encapsulation. So we take this existing reservation platform and we encapsulate it with a retail-based order management system. Now, the challenge with that is that actually over time, and once we've all made that transition, effectively we've still got legacy in the core. And that has to affect agility, and it has to affect cost of ownership. The other challenge, the other route is to take a pure core route. And this is the route that we take, which is actually keeping the core pure, keeping it pure of the legacy capability, the legacy protocols and processes that we have, and then build the integration externally, so that when we've done our transitions and our migrations, that actually that then just withers and dies on the vine. So the challenge, and this is what we've now worked through, is how do you represent our traditional fare class inventory view of product to a retail view of the product? And in retail platforms, it's all about being product-centric. So having a very product-centric view of the world, because that, in essence, is what the customer's buying. They're buying a product or a service that they need to put in the shopping cart that they ultimately want to have in their customer order. So the abstraction and the mapping of that is absolutely key for transition. So managing that transition state, I want to talk about some of the things that we're actually doing right now. So we're already implementing live with customers. We've got customers live who are taking SAP Hybris Commerce and implementing that on top of the PSS, doing that mapping that I just showed you, so that you can still run the operational side of the business using fare classes and inventory-driven pricing, but actually manage now the customer experience in a much better way. What we're also doing, and this is currently in at the moment, is we're looking at how could airlines actually transition from the current way of operation to an IATA one order way of operation. And we're doing this in a proof of concept with an airline right now. So what we're doing is we are taking SAP Hybris Commerce and we're effectively running the airline in SAP Hybris Commerce. So it now masters the product, it masters the inventory, it masters the schedules, it masters the price. And we're able to take all of their reference data, their schedules, their O&D products, and we've taken all of those challenges and loaded those into the platform, and are now able to demonstrate that we can do the necessary combinability of the fares, apply the rules if it's advanced purchase or minimum stay products, or different class products mixing for returns. And what we've done is the scenario around interlining, so that you can sell an interline journey on Hybris Commerce where the second leg is operated by a carrier that's running on a traditional PSS. And we've done that through building EDIFACT capabilities on the external integration side of Hybris Commerce. So what that means is that when we do an availability search for the O&D product in Hybris, it's actually doing an availability request with the O&D trip information to the PSS using the industry standard EDIFACT, and getting back the response from the operating carrier for the second leg as to which fare class to present in the final product. And then we present that product back to them. And then also included in that proof of concept is being able to then sell that inventory wrap the P&R, and actually what we're doing is we're generating a P&R record locator and sending that in the message back to the PSS. So for all intents and purposes, we've got an airline running in a one-order mode, but presenting itself like a traditional PSS to an operating carrier PSS. And then the final piece, which is a one-order pilot that we completed recently, is where we've taken a number of use cases and actually delivered order accounting as well. So what we've looked at and what we've developed is the complete end-to-end business processes and use cases for IATA One Order in its current guise. And we ran a number of different use cases. So we did simple booking, simple return, payment by card and miles. We looked at O&D product. We then did voluntary change, and we did some involuntary change as well, so that we were actually able to demonstrate how, in a one-order way, the order management system can handle all of that and still, using through the web service, drive that into the accounting system. And just very quickly for you, so on the left-hand side, what you see is Hybris Commerce. This is the order. And we see here the customer's order now, so booking reference number 39. This is the first part of the return, so Heathrow, Charles de Gaulle. That flight's already departed, it's landed. So all of the flight status, all of the check-in and flown and boarded statuses for the customer's order is completely managed inside Hybris Commerce. And then on the right-hand side, what you see is our Hybris revenue billing product, which sits on top of our S/4HANA core, where we're able to take all of those elements of the order. So if you look closely, you'll see all of the products for the Heathrow Charles de Gaulle flight. So we've got, and all the prices associated with it. So we've got the seat, we've got the revenue, the £20 is for the allocated seat, the £47.99 is the base fare, the £26 is the APD tax, and then similar pricing model on the return. And then what you see in red is where we've actually now managed the delivery of those statuses. So your order management system is your order master, and that then delivers and changes the status so that those revenue items are then delivered. And what that means then is from a deferred revenue perspective is, obviously, because we're event-based driven, so we accrue revenue, we defer it until the flight's been flown. But in this case now, we'll see that first leg's been flown, and so therefore, there is no revenue remaining to be accrued. So that's now recognised. And what that means is that the revenue elements get posted to the sub-ledgers, and the tax and the APD and all the other elements get posted to the tax ledgers as well, so that your accrued liability is for reporting. So that's one order live and working, and we have very happy to share. If you want to come to the booth or get in contact with us, we've made videos that can explain all of this, so we're very happy to share some of that and talk you through. So how do we proceed? I think it was John this morning talked about change and what's the biggest roadblock of change. Well, actually, it's us, and it's our culture. And so therefore, what we need to do is to start thinking less about, well, we can't do it because we use fare classes and we have different fare classes, and what if we're doing disruption and we need IROPS, because otherwise how can I, reaccommodate a passenger from one plane to another, and how am I going to operate revenue accounting if I haven't got a ticket, and how am I going to reconcile that with a P&R? And we need to start thinking about, well, why don't we try it? And this is a change of philosophy. This is what we've put on this project that I was talking to you about earlier, where we start to not talk about fare class. We don't use words of fares and fare classes. We talk about products and customers and orders and selling a customer a service and the right to fly. You heard this morning with Anders and Matthias about the partnership that we formed with Pros. And we formed the partnership with Pros because when we sat down with them for a day in a workshop and we looked at our product portfolio and we looked at their product portfolio and we combined those product portfolios, we found something that we felt really can power modern commerce for airlines. I've heard a lot today about personalization, personalizing the offer. We talked about this morning in one of the keynotes about the shopper's DNA. Well, the way you can get that information is you need to have a customer profile. But with specifically, if you look at some of the laws in Europe now with GDPR and data protection, it's all about consent. So our acquisition of SAP Hybris Gigia now provides identity, consent management, and profiling, which means now that we can use that as an operational view of the customer's DNA, that not only can use that to power the experience that the customer is going to be getting on any of the digital touch points. So we start thinking about channels. We think about all the touch points, all the brand touch points that customer has, whether it's in the airport, whether it's on the mobile phone, whether it's in the web or on the kiosk or actually on the flight. And we use that to personalize the journey. But the exciting thing is when we now start to use that data to power Pro's merchandising, where they're developing cognitive platforms using AI and machine learning that can actually take all of this profile information that ingests social information about the customer that says what's their brand affinity, how are they feeling, what are they posting on Facebook, what brands are they interested in, what have they been looking on the site, have there been any abandoned baskets, which particular routes were they looking at, which channel, what device were they using, which market were they from, and actually now store over all of that. And if you can imagine, we make all of that information available to the Pro's portfolio. It suddenly changes some of the dynamics that we can do from a revenue management perspective, but also from an offer management perspective as well. So I'm very excited about the journey that we've been on. We've certainly been on a journey in the last 2 years. It doesn't stop there. I hope that in the last 20 minutes, really giving you a flavor about what SAP Hybris have been doing for the last year. When I was at the PSS conference in October last year, I was asked the question on one of the panels, so what next? And I said, well, watch this space. So I've been very excited this afternoon to share with you how not only are we able to show how we can power modern commerce, the partnerships that we've got with pros, but also how we've got one eye on the future. But not just saying, we've got a product stack in the future, so when everybody's ready, come and talk to us, but actually looking at and investing in how are we going to help this industry move to modern commerce and realize some of the visions and strategies that we've been talking about today. Thank you very much.